Marcus Antebi, and today is one of the most important podcasts or recordings of any kind that I'm considering myself doing, because I'm here with a dear friend and a great mentor to me, Mr. Fred Bisci. And Fred, say hello to the two people listening besides us.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the information that we're going to be sharing, and I think it's very, very exciting, and I definitely appreciate the work you're trying to do to bring a message to health, which is not easy to do to the world because there's a lot of misinformation and abstract science out there that, people don't know how to discern and separate fact from fiction. And
well, Donald Trump's going to fix all that. Donald Trump, he's got a few things he's working on, and all those problems are going to go away, so I heard.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so.
Well, I want to do a small intro to help help us move along in this conversation. I met Fred in 2010 when I opened up Juice Press store number 1 on East First Street. At that point in his life, he was a very active, spry, jumpy 80-year-old fella, and he came up to me and he asked me if I was the owner of the place, and I said yes. And he sat down on the bench outside and he started to, in a very inconspicuous way, feel me out and see what I was made of. And I kind of knew he was testing me. And even while trying to be somewhat humble, I couldn't help myself. I was just a young, egotistical guy, and I was a little bit of a braggart, but he saw through all that, and I think he gave me an opportunity to show him my nature, which was, I think I was there and I had the right intentions at Juice Press. I wanted to help people, and the one thing that I got from Fred, which was really important, was I really was in kindergarten when it came to understanding nutrition. I had been doing a lot of stuff myself before Juice Press, and by the time I opened Juice Press, I could say I was further along than the average person. But in terms of my understanding of the subtleties that go into the science of food that are very difficult to acquire that knowledge, it's not something you just Google, and certainly books, they're not the final word. Meeting somebody like Fred was really a blessing because I really thought of it as a cheat. It was like I was taking a giant test and I was sitting next to somebody that had all the notes written on their hand. And man, I used to grill him and talk to him, and it would help me bypass having to go through so much nonsense and controversy within the industry. And Fred even taught me to not really even believe him so much. He would give me chunks of information, and the way I felt about Fred's knowledge was he wasn't so attached to it. It was almost like, go off and figure it out for yourself. And so where I'm at today, I can't really judge what grade I'm in. I might still be in first grade. I could be in college. I don't know. But where I'm at today is a lot further along, and for Fred, I'm very grateful for that. So I want to have directed questions that I think will be very helpful to people long after you and I are gone, because that's how long they stay up on the internet now. And I have learned to ask the questions in a way that hopefully will be helpful. So the first thing is, what I've learned from you, you're one of my teachers, is that a person could literally intoxicate themselves and still live an extremely long life. We have a lot of cases of that all over the place, all throughout history. So nutrition and diet is only one part of the picture. The idea is that we have to understand that we're here on a conscious journey. We're trying to expand and understand more. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly what we put into our temple, and this isn't a spiritual thing, this is really technical science. This is a temple, this is our body, this is where we are here to worship. This is where we commence our life. What we put in here will determine how much we suffer and how quickly we learn. What I really appreciate about Fred is that, first of all, Fred, do you agree with that statement, or was that malarkey?
I do.
Okay, thank you. What I like about Fred is that I have really rarely, probably never met anybody, including myself, that has been committed to the cause of maintaining the temple in such a way that it's admirable and it's the gold standard. Fred has been 100% raw, vegan. That's no cooked food. Above what temperature?
Most of the food I eat is not heated at all. So.
But what would be the highest temperature right now? Just to be technical.
110 degrees, 120 degrees.
Nothing that's been altered molecularly for you scientific people above 110 degrees. So you've been doing that for how many years?
52, 53 years, more than a half a century.
Okay, so that means, to the layman, that means that you haven't had any cooked food, you haven't had any animal protein of any kind, no rubworms, no fish, no snails,
Nope.
octopus,
Nope.
little calamari.
Nope.
Are you allowed to eat clams raw?
Nope.
Okay, so a vegan.
Some people say you are, but I haven't done it.
You haven't had the
I
flesh.
took it to extreme as a matter of research. I didn't take it to those extremes because I had to do it. I was in good health. At one time, I was a 210-pound athlete. When I first became a raw fooder, everybody thought I shot myself in the foot. I lost 75 pounds. So, no, I didn't. I took it to the extreme to find out where the truth was.
How old were you when you started?
Oh, I mean, I'll be 90 in October, so take it back 52, 53 years.
And you woke up one day. Did you start your journey with veganism, plant-based, as a method of compassion, or were you more interested in the physicality of it or the science of it?
I think it was both, Marcus, because when I came back from the Korean War, if I could share
Please.
what really opened my eyes the first time, is that I had to get a job, and I got a job in Bayonne, New Jersey, working in a television factory, putting washers in the chassis of a television. And I met a guy walking across the Bayonne Bridge. And in the beginning, he wasn't very, very friendly. But then we got friendly. And he questioned me about where I worked. And I told him I asked him where he worked. And he told me right over there. He pointed to a building. It had no signs on it or anything. I said, "What are you doing there?" He said, "That was a slaughterhouse." I never knew there was a slaughterhouse. I don't think too many people know there was a slaughterhouse in Bayonne, New Jersey. So I was very curious, and I asked him if I could go in there and take a look. He said, "No, not unless you're looking for a job." And I said, "Well, I might be interested in a job." So I went over there, and I asked the guy if I could look around. He says, "You think you could do this kind of work?" Well, I could do anything if I had to. So he took me in, and that was the most eye-opening experience that I ever had, which I never forgot. And I think it was a combination between being in Dante's Inferno and being in an insane asylum, because it was the most horrible thing that I could ever experience. I never thought I would ever experience. But I walked out of there, and I mean, it left a definite impression on me. I mean, I'm not going to say I started walking around the next day, threw out my leather belt and my leather shoes, but it definitely brought me to a consciousness where, when I sat down in front of a steak, I mean, I kept thinking about where that steak came from. Then I ran into a friend of mine. A guy became a friend of mine. He was a natural hygienist. And he was into a raw diet, and he was a very unusual looking guy. He was extremely thin. And when you first looked at him, he didn't look like he was very healthy. But I noticed he had a tremendous amount of energy, and we became friends. He was always bringing me fruit and things like that. And being of my scientific background, I just thought he was a nice guy and that he was killing himself. Well, and little by little, I got interested, and I started studying the science behind it. And I thought it was a possibility that it could be a means to slow down the aging process, giving you an expanded consciousness, which I believe it has done that. And I started to made a determination to eat an all-raw diet, which, I mean, I was already eating a diet that probably had 45% raw foods in it, and I jumped right into it. And that's where it started. And as I said, I lost a tremendous amount of weight. I got very weak. I mean, felt like it was going to be a failure, but I was determined to hang in there, because what I understood about it, and supporting scientists told me that it was going to work out well. Of course, all my friends that I trained with, I was into boxing and weightlifting, Olympic type lifting, and they all thought I had lost my mind, and they all were into being as big as you could possibly be. And it turned out better than I expected. It turned out to be far more rewarding way of life than I ever imagined it could be.
Now, in terms of your accomplishments,
Right.
I don't want to call them accomplishments. That's a silly term. I would say experiences. Thank you. Well, everything is an accomplishment, therefore. But we'll say it's an accomplishment, it's an accolade for me.
Okay.
You told me that you accomplished 2 separate 40-day water-only fasts.
Yes. Well, one
Do
before
you have documentation to prove it? I'm kidding.
Not really. Nobody.
I believe everything you say.
Nobody believes you.
I know that you do. I know that, first of all, I know that you have the will to do it, and I know that I just know from how you speak and from how you teach and how you understand food and the body that it's very obvious to me that you've accomplished that. So that's you're saying that's true? You've done 2 40-day water
one
fasts.
was 40 days. One was 44 days, and the other was 40 days. Then I fasted over 30 days in my lifetime. To be honest with you, I'm not sure what it's 30 days, whether it was 5 or 6 times. But one time, there was a friend of mine, Paul from Florida, who's a nutritionist. He came to interview me, and I was about 28 days into a 30-day water fast. And once, water fasting is very, a lot of people are very confused by it now and it's getting to be a very popular thing now. Science is bearing out that it really is a fabulous way for the body to heal itself. And more people are getting into intermittent fasting because of Dr. Jason Fung, who's a urologist. And people are finding out by extending the overnight fast 18 hours or more, in 2 or 3 weeks, people are being healed of type 2 diabetes. But that's not what got me into it, because I was being mentored by some Europeans. I was studying under Europeans, actually. Otto Buchinger, Ragnar Berg, who won a Nobel Peace Prize. He was the guy that disproved that, you had to eat complete protein because of autolysis, which we've discussed, right? And Dr. Carl Otto Ali was the guy that supervised a 10-day water fast in Stockholm, Sweden, and 10 men walked, 10 might have been one woman in there, I don't recall exactly. They walked 330 miles. They slept that night and they got up and they walked. And I was impressed by that. And I was the type of person always seemed to, I guess it seemed like I liked to live on the edge. I started thinking about that right away. And then Dick Gregory, who was a political activist, who was very into this a lot too, he fasted 57 days and walked and ran 100 miles. That was all documented. And then I decided, I had a television show, Eat Your Way to Health, with Dr. Fred Bisci. And we were discussing that. There was a medical doctor on the show. Very intelligent man, very bright guy, very nice guy. But he said you couldn't do that. He said that you're telling me you're an experienced faster. Now that makes a big difference. You have to be an experienced faster. You can't take the average person and have them fast 20 days and expect them to go out and run. It's not going to happen, because the body has to be a clean vessel to switch to burn body fat very quickly. It's like a ketogenic diet. You're burning body fat. It's really ketogenic diet. You're not burning body fat completely, because you still have blood sugar someplace around 60 and 70. So you're using sugar too, not just ketones. So there's a lot of bad information. There's a mixed bag of tricks out there as far as information.
On the keto side.
Yes.
All right. I want to keep track of that because I want to come back to that. And so let's stay on the water fast experience, and
okay,
then I'm going to remind myself, because keto is really popular, and I definitely want to try to put some other information out there.
There could be. There's going to be a problem there. So what I did then, I decided to do it myself. So I was in a health food store on New York Lane once, and a whole bunch of people heard that I was going to do it, which I don't like, people going out and saying things, because people like to gossip, and I'm not into gossip. So I said, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it. So I fasted 10 days on water, and I went to meet with a few people at Clover Lake Park, and lo and behold, about between 50 and 75 people showed up with cameras and everything. But I ran 10 miles after a 10-day water fast, and of course, I'm a thin guy, and somebody took a picture and put it up on the internet, and some guy says, if this is what you look like after eating raw foods, I don't want to look that way. So the guy that works with me, Rory, who's a very diligent and technical guy, ran the guy down to put it on there, and the guy thought he was helping us, and we had it taken off. So fasting, once you start fasting, the average person goes into a water fast and they've never done it. Of course they're not going to feel good. After 72 hours, your body stops consuming the excesses that are in there.
It starts or it stops?
Starts.
It starts.
It takes 72 hours. The first 72 hours. If you feel dizzy or lightheaded right away, that means you're really a toxic person. It's like the people like a person that can't eat in the morning. They get lightheaded. They get dizzy. That's not your blood sugar going down. That's intoxication. That's the endogenous material coming out of your system. You should be able to go without food. A clean person should be able to go without food 5 or 6 days. No problem. No problem whatsoever. But people just don't believe that because they haven't experienced it. Once you're an experienced faster and you don't have a lot of sludge laying around in you, then when you, after like a 10-day or 20-day fast, you can actually, if you have a fat reserve, if you have enough fat under the serratus magnus where your ribs are, you can tell by looking at a person if their rib cage is standing out. That's why a lot of people don't realize a skinny guy, even a skinny guy like me, could fast 20 days. I got more than enough reserves to fast 20 days. But people don't look at that. They look at your belly, how much meat you have on you. So once you do that, and if you want to try something like that, once you know that you're clean from fasting, and not compromising in your diet. That's why it was so important that I didn't compromise in my diet, because I knew I wasn't going to get the right information, the right feedback from my body. And it had to be scientific. To me, when I did something, I worked backwards. Now they're working from theory, working to people actually doing it.
I get it. I did it, and then created
backwards.
a theory.
Then I figured out what was happening.
So I want to just try to put a little structure on the fasting thing, because it's obviously we're talking about water fasting, which is definitely a skilled, high-level activity. It's not for the average person. We're not talking about it in the context of weight loss. We're talking about it in the context of aiding the body in its ordinary, natural processes of healing. So who is most in need of a water fast?
Well, I think anybody that has any kind of a medical problem should go to a fasting expert like True North out in California, people that were doctors and people that experience fasts, to know if a water fast would enable them to gain benefit out of their condition. Not everybody should go into a water fast. There's certain conditions that people should not attempt a water fast. That's why juice cleansing has become so popular, because juice cleansing is a lot easier for people to accomplish. Remember, this is really about understanding the concept of what you're leaving out. No matter where you start from, if I was a crack addict and I stopped smoking crack and everything else is the same, I'm going to have an improvement in what's going on in my body because I gave up the crack.
Right. So I just want to help keep that in tune. So what we're saying is the benefit of a water fast is not the water, obviously. It's the fact that you've eliminated everything that could be intoxicating to the body.
Everything, period. You're freeing 70% of your energy to heal you.
Say that again?
The average person expends about 70% of their energy, the average American, to digest their food.
Well, it's more than American now, right? You would say that China and Europe and the Middle East, they all have the Western food epidemic.
Well, they're being indoctrinated because of the social media. Don't forget, social media is what we're doing today.
So you're saying that 70% of your energy goes towards getting rid of the problem of what we're actually consuming.
Give it, take. I mean, I'm picking a number. It might be 65. It might be, I'm picking a number.
Right. So we're saying by a water fast, you're eliminating all those mistakes and problems, and you're allowing the body to do what it's designed to do, is to heal itself.
Exactly.
Okay. So if we were living in the Garden of Eden, for example, and we were living a spiritual life, eating only fruits and vegetables, we drank clean water, we breathed clean air, would we still need to do a water fast?
No.
Only for what? Like a spiritual practice, maybe?
Yeah, if you want to do it for... I did it for spiritual practice.
Right. Okay, I understand. That's okay. So we're putting a little framework on it. Now, I tried to do a water fast for 72 hours. I failed. I got pretty close.
All right.
I'm going to keep trying. I'm inspired again to keep trying. As I get older, I have a lot more mind control. I think that's a lot of it. What it is, it's mental and also making the space right. But from what I've learned about water fasting from some of the people that started the science on it is that the guy that won the Nobel Prize in Japan, he proved that if a patient did a water fast for 72 hours before and 72 hours after, before starting chemotherapy,
it's true.
They had a substantially higher rate of survival from the chemotherapy. So in other words, his theory was that
it would be more effective also.
It would be more effective. The theory behind it is that the water fast literally allowed the immune system and everything in the body to absorb itself back down to nothing, and then the white stem cells would reproduce an entire white blood cell, or the immune system would essentially reboot, so then a person can more readily handle the nuclear bomb of chemotherapy.
Well, I don't agree with him 100%. I'll tell you why. What happens is...
I love this controversy in the fasting world.
What's happening is, don't forget, they're doing this scientifically, intellectually, but they haven't done it in reality. What happens when you do a 48 to 72 hour fast before chemotherapy, you're actually making the effect of the chemotherapy on the cancer cells more destructive. It's going to kill more cancer cells. Then what you're doing is that when you do the 72 hour or 48 hour fast after the chemotherapy, you're preventing a lot of the collateral damage. You're getting it out of your system as fast as you possibly can. A lot of the damage from the chemotherapy is done because it's in your system. Your body is going to try and put it into fat cells, but if it's in your system, it's still doing harm. And it's, there are people that do. I'm not a dogmatic guy. I look at it from all different angles. There are people that do chemo and survive the chemo and survive the cancer, but it's not something I would recommend, because there's a lot better things out there available now that do the same thing. Like Keytruda, one of the immunotherapy drugs, is made from astaxanthin. It's just the astaxanthin has a left-handed spin and the Keytruda has a right-handed spin. That's why it'll attack your heart and attack your brain.
You see how easy that is, Brian? Left hand spin, right hand spin. I want to come back to what something that I think is really important is that we understand that chemotherapy and radiation to treat cancer is obviously a miraculous discovery in its very early stages, and I would say in the hands of compassionate, awake, enlightened people, it could become something better. But from what we understand, we know that it's not exactly developed where it should be, because we understand that really the holistic approach could essentially include things like diet and lifestyle choices while using drastic intervention like chemotherapy. It should never be just chemotherapy alone, because potentially one is not addressing the core issues of what's going wrong in the body.
I agree with you.
They don't take a holistic approach. It's sort of like somebody stumbles in.
I think it's quackery.
Well, I think what I see in my very limited experience is that someone goes from being healthy, presumably, and then they wake up with a problem, and then they have cancer. And usually it's very difficult to get a person to dramatically alter their lifestyle. And so intervention in a nuclear bomb sort of way is really maybe the only solution.
Can I interject something
yes,
here?
Yes, of course. That's
one
why
of the one of the main problems that's not being addressed, and that's something that you touched on just a minute ago, is what a lot of people are not being told. There's a major psychological component to hunger. Animals are instinctual. They do everything by instinct. We're cerebral. We think we're so smart. We can apply reasoning, logic, and all those type of things. And most people today in our society, when they grab something to eat, they're not going to say, "Oh, I'm going to take this, but this don't taste good, but I'm going to take this." No, they're going to, but it's healthy. They're going to take this over here, knowing it's not healthy, but it's delicious, and it's going to make me feel good. So that's the psychological component to hunger.
And there's also a sense of denial.
Well, that's also the psychological component that prevents us from fasting.
It prevents us from doing a lot of things. I think that we're all
drugs, alcohol.
Yeah, we're all in a different spot in our journey in this lifetime, and I think that when I listen to you talk about your fasting experience, I feel like a novice. I usually feel, when I'm telling people about my lifestyle, I feel like they look at me like they feel behind. When I think about what you're accomplishing, it's not to blow smoke at you.
No.
It's really just more or less that I admire what you've accomplished, and I really do see a need for me to try these things myself. I'm very curious about them, and I feel like they'll help me physically, and I think that the development that I'm trying to accomplish with my understanding of the nature of my life, I think these things are really in my path. So I'm very grateful to sit here and learn from you.
Oh, that's all right.
I want to just add something. My friend Eddie Stern is going to join us on this program. He's someone that I think you really admire, and I'm really excited that he's going to come here any minute. The first
Okay.
time you're meeting him is on the air.